if you want to consistently be able to beat the books in 2026, you're going to need a data model, and you're going to need a really good one. That's why I've built out Rudebets since 2024, and I want to teach you guys specifically today how to use the NBA app. If you haven't signed up for Rudebets yet, just go to wap.com/Rudebets, click the Rudebets Premium, and you will unlock all of this stuff right here, including the app, which we're going to go over today, and the Edge Calculator. You also get all the premium picks, the premium chats, stuff like that, but today we're going to focus specifically on the app. And specifically, we're going to focus on the NBA module. We do have an MLB module, college basketball, college football, and NFL. But right now, NBA is really the only sport on outside of college basketball, in which if you click the drop down here, you'll be able to access the college basketball version and be able to use this as well. But today, we're going to go to the NBA because it's really detailed, and I want to go into the weeds with you. There are really only 4 tabs at the top here that you really need to focus on. Player Sim and Game Sim, those will auto-populate for you, so you never really need to use these. Unless you really want to get manual with it, which I don't know why you would, you just can ignore these two. But top matchups, over projections, first basket zone, projected scores are the important ones. And as you can see here, just starting at the base page, you have the projected scores, which is just going to be all the projected scores for every game in the NBA today. What you'll see here, if we look at like Timberwolves Clippers, 53% chance that the Timberwolves win on the road. It gives you the projected score, 115 to 112, projected spread, as well as the total for the game. So just a quick overview of those games. You can then click on a game to populate it in the game sim. This is going to give you projections for every single player for basically any stat category that you could need. So if you just want to quickly look at projections as you look at your book and the lines, you can quickly do that from here. We have the rebounds, assists, points, PRA, three-pointers, RA, PA, PR, and first basket probabilities for every player that's on the rosters for both teams. So that's just a quick way if you just really, really quickly want to look at like a points projection and then take a play based off of that. But if you want to get more in the weeds, all you have to do is just click on a player's name. So we'll click on Ant Edwards here, and it's going to populate in the player sim. And we're going to go over this page in pretty good detail because there is a lot of information on it. But it's very simple once you kind of understand what you're looking at. So first and foremost, it's going to tell you the position, who he's playing, if he's healthy or questionable. Expected minutes, a very important number, especially for role players. Opponent rank, so from 1 to 30. 1 would be red. It would be a very hard matchup, being the number 1 defense. 30 would be they're a bad defense. It's a great matchup. So right here, and 17, it's about right in the middle. That's why it's yellow. It's not a great matchup. It's not a bad matchup. And that's all versus position. And then underneath that, we have some general stats for the year. Points per game, assists, rebounds per game, 3-point percentage, and then his field goal plus free throw attempts. So he's shooting about 27.8 shots plus free throws per game. And underneath that, we have a little bit more stats as well as some early projections here. So expected field goals plus free throw attempts. I love this metric right here. This tells you about how many shots they're going to take. And shot volume kind of rules everything, especially if you're taking points lines. So his expected shots plus free throws today is 26.10, which is about 1 less than normal. Might be a little bit of a slower paced game. And his expected field goal attempts, if we take out the free throws, expect him to shoot about 19 shots and then 7 free throws. So you can just do the math there. 3PA, which is how often he shoots threes. So 30% of his shots, about 31% of his shot attempts are 3-pointers. So of his 19, about 31% of those will be threes. And then his minutes per game, once again, 35.6. It's Ant Edwards. That's what we have him projected at. He's a very steady player when it comes to minutes. You don't really need to worry about his too much. But for other players, you can look at their last 10 minutes per game, their last 5 minutes per game, and then also the offensive rebounds per game and defensive rebounds per game. So these aren't projections for the most part, except for these first two. Most of this is just statistical data to get a overview of the player, to understand kind of some things that they do and some metrics that they have. Right underneath that, we have the first basket data. So if you're looking for first baskets and you just want to dive into this matchup, you can quickly see the first baskets per game, the probability, the fair odds, his hit rate. The first basket's allowed to his position. In this case, we have an NA, so we can just check that out at a different place to make sure that there's something not broken there. And then the league average to shooting guards, so 19% is what the NBA generally allows to his position. So we can see 19% here is his probability as well. So fair odds of 421 means get him around the plus 450, plus 500 mark, and you have a really good play there for a first basket. This first graph is for minutes. Once again, the first tab, if there's any data to populate recently versus the opponent, it'll populate. If not, it won't. Last 5 and then last 10 games overall. These are just like the number of minutes he's played in each of these games. Once again, for a player like Ant, it doesn't matter too much. But for role players, it's really nice to be able to quickly see, is he steadily getting minutes or is the guy volatile, right? I don't like to take players because I think minutes rules everything in the NBA. if there's a guy who gets like, 28 minutes one night, and then the next night he's at 18, then the next night he's at 32, then the next night he's at 14, like that's kind of a riskier play. So it's good to see that data. Excuse me. So minutes, very important. Also, we do have the method of first basket stats. So of Ant's first baskets, 27% of them 3-pointers, 36% of them layups, 36% of them the other category. These are all, you can bet on the type of first basket that you do. So you can see how often a guy scores from a certain spot. And we can also see that for the team data when we get to the first basket zone. But now going into the buckets here, these are just different buckets for all the different stat categories, right? So similarly, we're going to have all those graphs. You can see his last 5, his last 10 for all the different types of things here. We do have potential assists built in for the assists. So that just shows, a potential assist just means he passed the ball to a guy who then shot the ball. If he would have made it, it would have been an assist, but he missed. So in this case, on this game, March 1st, he had 6 assists, 9 potential. That means 3 guys essentially missed shots that he passed them the ball. So it gives you a good view to see like, okay, did he, like this game right here, he only had 2 assists, but he had 12 potential. So he could have had a really good assist game. His team let him down, right? Like that's what that tells you there. So it just shows you like, is he passing the ball a lot to guys who shoot it or not? But yeah, quickly you can see all the different data there. But what's really nice here is the probabilities, and this leads right into the edge calculator. And these are all the same. I really only need to go over one of these buckets because every single one is the same concept. It's just a different stat category, right? So we're going to have the matchup factor. So it's going to tell you, a matchup factor. To clarify what this is a rating of percentage or a multiplier of how many of the stat category the defense allows to that position compared to the NBA average. So in this case, 1.00 means that they are exactly league average when it comes to the points that they allow per game to shooting guards. If we go to like the top matchups here real quick, I'll just quickly explain this tab because that's all this tab is you can sort these by the different stat categories. And you can see 1.2, which is the number one matchup for points. So this position here, Mason Plumlee and Diabate against the Kings. Those are centers. If you don't know, you can click on their name and see what position they are. But centers versus the Kings is the best points matchup today because the Kings allow 1.2 times the amount of points per game to centers, or 20% more points per game to centers. So, for example, simple math here. If the NBA average allows 10 points a game to centers, across all teams, across all games, the average amount of points allowed to a center is 10. This would mean that the Kings, on average, are allowing 20% more points per game to centers. So they allow that 20% more of that stat. Same with assists, 1.3. So this team allows 30% more assists. The Jazz allow 30% more assists to OG Anunoby's position per game than the NBA average. So it tells you they have a good matchup. If you sort it the other way, this team allows 22% less assists to this position. So the Raptors are really good defensively against assists. And against points, the Clippers are really good defensively against the power forward, right? They allow 10% less points, the first ranked matchup in the NBA. That's what the number here is. So 30th ranked means that they're the worst in the NBA against centers. So that's what the top matchups is. But let's go back into Ant real quick and go over those buckets so you can quickly understand how to use them. If we're looking at points here, so you can see here the last 5 average points per game, 29.8. Last 10 average per game, 29.5. His expected points today, 27.54. We're projecting him for 27.54 points. Let's say his points line is 28.5. You put that in, it's going to change these probabilities. So you can quickly see like what's fair value for that line based on the model. So if we're looking at like a 27.5 point line, okay, so there's a 50-50 chance essentially, plus 104 for him to go over 27.5. If his line's 26.5, you want to get odds around minus 131. If his line's 25.5, you want to get his odds around minus 179, right? If you want to get him for 25 points, it's a very common line you can take. You want to get him at around minus 247, minus 250. He's a 71% chance to get 25 plus points. Now, this is a quick way you can use the edge calculator. So if you have this number and you write it down, right, minus 247. So if we go to the edge calculator, there's 2 buckets here. And this isn't that important. It's really if you just want to calculate your plus EV or you don't know how much to put on a play, you can say, let's say we have $1,000 in our bankroll, right? And we want to use the recommended quarter Kelly system. Full Kelly, half Kelly, and quarter Kelly are different betting systems for how much to put on a play. Quarter Kelly is the most conservative. Also the recommended. Full Kelly is extremely, extremely aggressive. Not recommended. But if you really want to do it, you could. You put your bankroll in. The Rudebets odds, we said it was minus 247 for him to get 25 plus points. Say you're looking at your book and you see that his 25 plus points is minus 200, right? So what it does here is it calculates the probability, the implied probability of the model's odds. So minus 247, 71.18% chance. And then it calculates the probabilities of the book odds. So minus 200 is a 66% chance. It just takes the difference. So it says that you have a 4.51% expected value based on the model. And it'll tell you right here, risk amount $11.28. If you go up to half Kelly, it'll tell you to put $22.55. If you go to full Kelly, it'll tell you to put $45 on that play. And it'll tell you how much you'd win based on the book odds, right? So it's just a quick way. And if you're doing parlay, say you have a minus 247 leg, you have a minus whatever, 265, you're doing a 2-leg. And on the book, this one here is also minus 200. Well, now on your parlay, you have a 7% edge overall, right? So on this 2-leg parlay, the parlay odds, what we would expect them to be is minus 107. What they actually are on the book here at minus 200 is plus 125. You're getting a 7% edge on that parlay. So you can quickly calculate like, okay, what's the value based on the projection? It's a good way to quantify the value of the projection compared to the book's odds. So if you don't know about odds and all of that stuff yet, can potentially make another tutorial that goes deeper into this. If you want to understand expected value, just drop a comment below and I will do that. But that's what this function is in the edge calculator, is able to calculate the projections odds compared to your book odds. So yeah, and that's the same concept then for every single one of these buckets, right? You can adjust all these different lines. The points one, you can adjust the rebounds line and get the different probabilities if you really, really care about the EV and all of that stuff. Some people don't. I would recommend at least giving it some thought, looking at it. It is pretty important to understand, like, what is the projection saying about the probability of it hitting? Because that's important data. So I would just keep an eye out for that. I like to look for 2 points above the projection. So if I'm taking Ant Edwards on a 27.54 projection, I want to see his line at 25.5, right? That's 2 points above. If I'm taking his over, I want to see it at 2 points above. Now, if I was taking his under, I'd want to see him at 29.5 as his line and then take him under. So that's my rule personally, but find a system that works for you. I exclusively only take points plays in the NBA. So some people like to take PRA, some people like to take all these other different lines. I only do points plays. But that's just because I like to eliminate all variables from that are out of my control, right? Assists, like I was just showing you with Ant's potential assists. He had 12 potential assists in this game, but only had 2 assists. He did his job to get his assist line. I'm sure his line was like 3.5 or something, right? He went under, but he had 12 potential assists. Like, that would drive me nuts because it's out of his control. Whereas points, it's just about him shooting the ball and making it. Like, as long as he gets his volume, which we're looking at up here, 26.10, and this is another thing I like to look for, is if his line is, I like to look for a guy whose expected field goal attempts and free throw attempts is equal to or better than his line. So if his line is 25.5, I want to see him at least at 26 shots plus free throws. Now, if his line is 29.5 and he's projected 26, he's got to make more than he misses. He's got to shoot over 50% to get there. I like to be 1 point per 1 shot. That's a good rule for me for a guy's line that I like to take on points. So I like to always double check this number as well. But yeah, that's the player page, right? Like, there's a lot of good stuff in here. You can see these trends if you care about that. Just understand what they're looking like. You can see their averages over the last 5, last 10. You see the projection. You can see the matchup factor, and then you can see the probabilities for the different lines. So that's what it is for all the different buckets. And like I said, once more, the minutes is very important for role players as well as your general data. So the next tab, like we talked about already, top matchups. I already explained this one. Very useful just for quickly checking, like, who's in a good spot. Like, if you don't know where to start for the day, you could always just start in the top matchups and just see who's got the good matchups. Click on their name and then go from there and start looking at the projections and seeing, like, okay, he does a pretty good matchup. Like, how are his points, whatever, right? Like, what's his projection looking like? So that page is pretty quick, just to get an overview of the matchups. The top over projections, this is just every single projection. So I showed you already when you click on a score, it shows you the projected projections for just those teams. This is everybody across all the games. So you can just quickly sort, like, who's the highest projected scorer of the day, or assists, or first basket, right? Like, I want to see first baskets. Ant's number 1 with a 19%. And then after that, you have Jalen Suggs, Brunson, Sengun, right? It goes from there. But this is a quick way to just see those projection values. Or if you just have, like, your app up and you're, like, looking through lines and you don't want to click game by game, you just want to quickly search, like, okay, Suggs, okay, cool. I want to go look at Harden, okay, cool. I want to go look at Paolo, cool. Like, you can just quickly type in their names and search from there. But that's all this is. You can then also obviously click on the names and get right back to that player page if you want to dive in further on any of the players. And then lastly, the first basket zone. This is for those of you who like first baskets and really want to get in the weeds. This is going to have probably the most in-depth data for first baskets you'll find anywhere. There's not that much data on it. This is all I had to manually build this. Like, you can't just find these data points online outside of my site. So we have 5 tabs here. We'll start with the player stats. So this one is just going to be all the different players that have scored a first basket this year. And you can see like the number one guy, well, tie between Bam and Jamal Murray and Jarrett Allen, all of 13 first baskets made. And then you can see the types that they've made too. So you can see like, okay, Bam's made 13 first baskets. 4 of them have been threes, 3 free throws, 2 layups, 4 others. So you can see his 2 most common are 3-pointers at 30% and others at 30%. Or you can see like who scored the most threes this year. I don't know if you care about any of this stuff, but you can see the methods of how they've scored these first baskets to really just see how your player does. And this data, like I said, is already all in the player page. So when we go to Bam, oh, Bam doesn't want to load this time. Anyway, if you were to click on a player, you could see it too, right? And then allowed by position, we'll go over these 4. These are all team metrics. So allowed by position is the first baskets allowed by each team based on the position. So if you want to look at the most first baskets allowed this year, it's the Bulls. They've allowed 44 first baskets. They allow the most here to small forwards. 39% of their first baskets they've allowed come to small forwards. So if you see a team playing the Bulls, you might want to look at the small forward as a player to score first, because the Bulls allow a lot of first baskets and they allow a lot to that position. You can also look at who's allowed the least, right? So Cavs, Knicks, Heat, they don't really give up first baskets, so you don't really want to target opponents of those teams. And then you can sort these. So then that's that really. Allowed by method is the same concept. It's just instead of it being by the position, it's by method. So you can see, okay, Bulls have allowed a lot of, this is for really crazy parlays, but this is for people who want to say, like, I want to take a guy to score a 3-pointer as the first basket. We can see, like, okay, the Bulls allow 44 first baskets. The most they allow are actually layups. So maybe you want to take a guy for a layup or something like that. Or if there's a huge outlier like this, the Clippers, 47% of their first baskets they allowed, they're 3-pointers. So maybe if you're taking a guy against the Clippers and you really want to get crazy, you can take him for a 3-pointer, right? And then the other 2 are how teams score. So most first baskets scored this year, it's pretty much the inverse of the allowed, right? Number 1 is Cavs, Knicks, and Heat, right? Those teams have scored the most first baskets this year. You can see what positions score the most. So center, obviously Jarrett Allen has a ton, so him and Donovan Mitchell score the most for them. And then score by method, you can see how these teams score their first baskets. So the Knicks score a lot of 3-pointers as their first basket. The Heat score a lot of 3-pointers as their first basket. So yeah, that's these 2 right here is how they score. I think allowed by the position is the most effective. It tells you, if you're looking at a team real quick, we saw the Clippers earlier against Ant Edwards. 32% of their first baskets allowed are against the shooting guard, which is his position. So Ant scores a ton of first baskets. The Clippers allow the most to shooting guards. That's a great play. And that's also why his projection's 19%, right? That's all built into that. So you don't really have to look at this stuff too much, but if you want to, you can really get in the weeds with the first basket data in this table right here. But yeah, that's pretty much it. It's a very simple app to use once you understand what you're looking at. Once again, you click on a game and then you have all your information from there. You click on a player and you got all your information from there. And you can really get into the weeds with this stuff and look for plays that you like. I recommend, like I said earlier, devise a system. For me, the system is looking for the projection being 2 more or 2 less than the line. That's it. That's what I look for. So for points, 23.38 for Brunson. If his line's 25.5, I like him going under today, right? If his line is 21.5, I like him going over. That's the plays I look for. And once again, you can quickly look at all the top performers today or just search any player you want. So that's how you use the Rudebets app. I hope this helped. Drop a comment below if there's anything else that you want me to go over in more depth, or drop me a message in the WAP. You guys can just message me right in here if you join the community, and I'll help you out with anything that I can. And I'll make another tutorial for MLB because that's another extremely, extremely detailed app with a lot of different functions and features. But yeah, I hope this helped, and I'll catch you guys next time. Peace out.